The movie begins in the bustling city of Hong Kong, where life is moving exactly as it always does. A group of 17 strangers boards a late-night minibus from a local bus station. None of them know each other, and to them, it's just another ordinary ride home. At this moment, no one has the slightest idea that their lives are about to change forever. As the minibus enters a tunnel, everything seems completely normal. But the instant it emerges on the other side, something unimaginable has happened. The Hong Kong they knew has vanished. The crowded streets are now eerily silent. There are no cars, no pedestrians, and not even a single animal in sight. It's as if the entire population has disappeared without leaving behind a trace. At first, the passengers don't think much of it. But as the silence stretches on, an uneasy feeling begins to spread through the bus. Everyone looks around in disbelief, trying to understand what they're seeing. One young woman notices that the messages she was sending to her friends suddenly refused to go through. At the same time, a businessman who had been on an important phone call realizes the call has been disconnected. No matter how many times he tries, there's no signal and no way to reconnect. Eventually, the minibus reaches its destination. The passengers step outside, only to find the area completely deserted. This place is usually packed with people, even at midnight. But now, it feels as though humanity has simply been erased from existence. In the distance, they can spot a few bicycles, but there's no one riding them. Restaurants are filled with untouched food, yet not a single customer or worker can be found anywhere. Confused and terrified, the group desperately tries to understand what happened. They replay the journey in their minds, wondering at which exact moment everything changed. That's when the businessman remembers something strange. For just a split second, he had blinked, and when he opened his eyes, the digital clock inside the bus displayed a different time. The driver recalls experiencing the exact same moment. He had briefly looked down to change the song playing on the radio. A flashback then reveals the shocking truth. Every single passenger blinked at the exact same second, almost as if an unseen force had compelled them to do it. And during that single moment, their entire world had changed. Trying to make sense of the impossible, the businessman concludes that they must have died and somehow crossed into the afterlife. But another passenger quickly disagrees. She insists they're still alive. According to her, they haven't entered the world of the dead. They've somehow slipped into another dimension, or perhaps an entirely different timeline. At this point, everyone is asking the same terrifying question. What exactly happened to the world? Desperate for answers, a few passengers step off the bus and begin searching the deserted streets. Some shout at the top of their lungs, hoping someone, anyone, will respond. But all they hear is the chilling echo of their own voices. The unnatural silence becomes so overwhelming that it starts filling them with fear. A young man suddenly notices that his phone has picked up an internet signal. Excited, he quickly opens his browser, hoping to contact someone. But what he discovers is even more disturbing. Every website has completely stopped updating after exactly 2:08. Google doesn't work, news pages are frozen, and it's as if time itself came to a halt at that precise moment. Determined to uncover the truth, the young man and a girl from the bus continue exploring the empty city. They hope they'll either find a way out or finally understand what happened. As they walk, they spot a mysterious masked man standing silently in the distance. At first, the boy is terrified, but then another thought crosses his mind. Maybe this stranger knows what's going on. Maybe he has the answers they've been desperately searching for. Just as he's about to approach the masked figure, the boy turns toward his companion and freezes in horror. The girl's face has suddenly turned an unnatural shade of blue. She stares at him with lifeless eyes, her hair swaying eerily in the wind, looking as though something sinister has taken control of her body. Terrified, the boy shuts his eyes tightly. When he slowly opens them again, everything is back to normal. The girl is standing there as if nothing ever happened. Meanwhile, 4 students from the bus split up, and one of them heads back to his apartment. Moments after arriving home, he suddenly becomes violently sick. He begins vomiting uncontrollably before collapsing onto the sofa. His entire body starts shaking, and his screams echo through the apartment. Hearing the commotion, his friends rush inside, only to witness a horrifying sight. Before their eyes, the student's body suddenly catches fire, Within seconds, he is completely burned alive, turning into nothing but ashes. The shocking scene leaves everyone frozen in terror. They realize that if this can happen to him, it could happen to any of them. Panicking, the remaining students flee the apartment as fast as they can. While running through the deserted streets, they come across the same mysterious masked man riding a bicycle. The masked stranger notices them and immediately starts chasing them. But before he can catch up, something even more horrifying happens. The exhausted students suddenly stop in their tracks. One after another, their bodies burst into flames, and within moments, they too are reduced to piles of ash. Watching this impossible event unfold, even the masked man is left completely stunned, as if his mind is gone blank. The masked man watches in horror as the third student tries to run away, but before the boy can get very far, his body suddenly goes limp and he collapses to the ground. Then, something even more horrifying happens. His mouth begins to swell unnaturally, and in the very next second, it violently bursts open, sending pieces of his skull and brain flying. Within moments, he too dies in the most gruesome way imaginable. At the same time, the remaining passengers are scattered across the city. Some are inside their homes, while others have taken shelter in nearby restaurants. Suddenly, every single one of their phones starts ringing at the exact same time. Hoping someone has finally contacted them, they immediately answer the calls. But instead of hearing a human voice, all they hear are strange electronic beeping sounds. The frightened survivors quickly gather back inside the minibus and compare what they heard. To everyone's shock, every single phone received the exact same mysterious signal. Realizing that whatever is happening is affecting all of them, the bus driver decides they need to stay together and figure things out before the situation gets even worse. Fortunately, one of the passengers is a technician. He listens carefully to the strange beeping and quickly realizes it's actually Morse code. After patiently decoding the message, his face turns pale. What he uncovers isn't a rescue message, it's a terrifying warning. According to the decoded transmission, Earth is no longer habitable for humans. Humanity has no future here anymore. The message makes it sound as if Judgment Day has already arrived. Hearing this, panic spreads through the group. Some believe aliens may have wiped out humanity. Others think it's some kind of supernatural curse. Everyone comes up with a different theory, but no one has any real answers. They still don't know what happened, or what will happen next. Before anyone can process the shocking revelation, another tragedy strikes. The young man who had been encouraging everyone to stay calm suddenly catches fire without any warning. The terrified survivors rush toward him and desperately try to save his life, but nothing works. Within seconds, his body is completely consumed by the flames, and he too is reduced to nothing but ashes. Watching another person die so helplessly shatters whatever hope they had left. They finally realize that death could come for any one of them at any moment. Panic completely takes over, and everyone begins running in different directions, believing they might somehow escape their fate. Amid the chaos, they once again spot the mysterious masked man. Seeing that he's still alive while everyone else keeps dying, they become convinced that he knows the truth. One passenger even suggests that there may have been a chemical disaster that wiped out humanity, and perhaps the masked man somehow survived it. With no other leads left to follow, the survivors decide they must capture him, because he may be the only person who knows what's really happening. As the survivors chase the mysterious masked man, one of the boys suddenly crashes into something and falls to the ground. Looking up, he freezes in horror. Lying before him is the body of the same young woman who had been riding the bus with them. She is already dead, and judging by the horrific injuries covering her body, she was brutally tortured before she died. The shocking discovery leaves him completely speechless. Meanwhile, the long-haired cyclist who had witnessed several people die one after another is nowhere to be seen. Instead, the businessman and another passenger finally manage to catch the masked man after a long chase. They force him to the ground, remove his mask, and immediately begin bombarding him with questions. They desperately ask what's happening, whether aliens are responsible, and who he really is. The frightened man tries to answer, but there's a problem. None of them can understand a single word he's saying because he's speaking Japanese. Luckily, one of the girls quickly opens the translator app on her phone, hoping it will help them communicate. But after translating his words, they are left disappointed. The man doesn't seem to know anything about the disaster. He keeps repeating only one thing: "Please, give me back my mask." The survivors refuse to believe him. They threaten him, hoping fear will force him to reveal the truth. But the terrified man simply grabs the first opportunity to escape and runs away before they can stop him. The story then shifts back to the long-haired cyclist. After witnessing 3 horrifying deaths with his own eyes, he's completely traumatized. Unable to process everything he's seen, he hides inside a nearby apartment, hoping to stay safe. While hiding there, his phone suddenly rings. To his surprise, it's a call from his friend. He answers immediately and desperately asks where everyone is and what has happened. But instead of answering, his friend sounds equally confused and asks him where he's been all this time. The boy replies that he has no idea where they are. He explains that he and several others are trapped in an empty city where every human being has mysteriously vanished. His friend's response leaves him completely stunned. She asks, "You've been trapped there for 6 years?" Hearing those words, the boy is left speechless. For him, only a single day has passed since the bus entered the tunnel. But in the real world, 6 entire years have gone by. That's the moment he realizes the horrifying truth. They didn't simply disappear. They somehow crossed into another dimension where time flows completely differently from the real world. The boy slowly pieces everything together. The people he watched dying in this strange world must have reached the moment of their death in the real world as well. That's why they suddenly disappeared here too. The horrifying realization terrifies him even more, and he rushes back to warn the others. Before he can even explain everything, another horrifying incident unfolds right in front of them. One of the survivors suddenly begins screaming in agony. His body starts breaking apart piece by piece, and within moments, he crumbles into ashes before everyone's eyes. No one can do anything except watch helplessly as another life is erased. Shaken by what he has learned, the young man tells the group about the phone call. He reveals that his friend said he has been missing for 6 years. The entire group falls silent. Nobody can believe what they're hearing. Suddenly, many of the strange events they've witnessed begin to make a little more sense. The technician then shares his own theory. He remembers that there's a massive chemical factory not far from where they are. According to him, a chemical explosion might have triggered all of this, somehow pulling them into another dimension. Although it's only a theory, it's the first explanation that seems remotely possible. With no better options, the group decides to travel to the chemical factory and search for answers themselves. However, there's one major problem. The minibus has completely run out of fuel. Without wasting any time, the bus driver volunteers to risk his own life. He decides to head alone to a nearby gas station, bring back enough fuel, and drive everyone to the factory. The driver successfully fills a fuel container and starts making his way back. But on the way, he suddenly comes face to face with another passenger from the minibus, a drug addict who had been unconscious the entire time because of an overdose. Having just regained consciousness, the man has no idea what's happening and mistakenly believes the driver is trying to harm him. The confused addict suddenly attacks. A violent struggle breaks out between the two men. Forced to defend himself, the bus driver grabs an axe and strikes his attacker in the neck. After finally overpowering him, the exhausted driver leaves the man behind and returns to the others with the fuel. Meanwhile, the rest of the survivors take shelter inside a hotel. Believing that everything happening to them might be some kind of divine punishment, they begin confessing the worst sins they've ever committed, hoping it might somehow save their lives. When one young man finally speaks, he admits that he never personally committed the crime, but he stood by and allowed it to happen. He reveals that when he and 2 of his friends got off the bus earlier, those friends sexually assaulted a young woman. He watched everything unfold. He could have stopped them, but he chose to remain silent. According to him, that cowardice is the greatest sin he has ever committed. As soon as he finishes confessing, everyone realizes something disturbing. One of the 2 attackers had already died earlier, while the other is somehow still alive. The survivors immediately begin staring at him with disgust and anger. Before long, they completely lose control and start beating him mercilessly. The survivors finally reach a decision. They believe the attacker deserves no mercy and should never be allowed to live. One by one, they stab him in the chest. Even the businessman steps forward with tears in his eyes. As he drives the knife into the man's heart, he says he has 2 daughters of his own and can't bear the thought of anyone doing something so horrifying to them. The attacker desperately begs for his life, but no one listens. Moments later, he finally dies. To get rid of the body, the group wraps it in plastic and carries it toward a large freezer. But just as they're about to place him inside, the impossible happens. The man's eyes suddenly snap open. Blood begins pouring from them, and he rises to his feet with a terrifying expression. Somehow, he isn't dead. Consumed by rage, he breaks free and attacks everyone around him. In the middle of the chaos, he suddenly hears a mysterious voice. The unseen figure, referred to as the developer, tells him not to waste time killing these people. Instead, he should go after the friend who exposed his secret and caused the others to turn against him. Almost as if hypnotized, the attacker immediately changes his target and goes after that friend. Before he can reach him, however, the developer suddenly appears from behind and strikes him on the head with a heavy object, knocking him unconscious. Realizing they can't stay there any longer, the survivors head to a nearby general store. They gather whatever supplies they can find and put on protective suits, believing the strange air around them may be contaminated with dangerous chemicals. Fully equipped, they finally make their way to the chemical factory they suspected from the beginning. They hope this place holds the answers to everything that's happened. But the moment they arrive, they discover several masked workers wandering around the facility. Judging by their appearance, these workers also seem to be trapped inside this mysterious world. However, instead of helping, the masked workers immediately attack the group without hesitation. The survivors panic and sprint back toward their minibus. Everyone climbs aboard while the injured bus driver once again takes the wheel and floors the accelerator. The factory workers jump into their own vehicles and begin chasing the bus at high speed. They quickly surround it from every direction, repeatedly slamming into its sides. The relentless attacks severely damage the minibus, and before long, it can no longer continue. With no other choice left, the survivors are forced to bring the bus to a stop. Just when the survivors think things can't get any stranger, they see a familiar face standing in front of the stopped bus. It's the drug addict whom the bus driver had struck with an axe earlier. The axe is still buried deep in his shoulder, yet somehow he's still alive. Everyone is left completely speechless as he calmly climbs onto the bus. The survivors immediately tell him to pull the axe out, but he refuses. He explains that as long as the axe remains lodged in his shoulder, it's preventing him from bleeding to death. The moment he removes it, he'll die instantly. Hearing this, everyone realizes he's telling the truth and decides to leave it where it is. Just then, the sky suddenly changes. What looks like blood begins pouring from the clouds, terrifying everyone inside the bus. But when they touch the red liquid, they discover it's not blood at all. It's a highly corrosive acid capable of destroying anything it touches. Staying outside is no longer an option. Knowing they have only one chance left to survive, the injured bus driver starts the damaged minibus one final time. Somehow, the engine comes back to life, and they quickly drive away from the deadly acid rain in search of a safer place. As they continue down the empty roads, they come across another young man. Earlier, he had been injured during one of the violent confrontations. Realizing that every survivor is precious in this strange world, they immediately bring him onto the bus. The wounded man looks around at everyone and quietly asks the question that's been haunting them all. Where are we supposed to go now? What do we do next? No one has an answer. After a long silence, one of the passengers suggests returning to the very tunnel where everything began. If entering that tunnel brought them into this nightmare, maybe passing through it again is the only way back home. The others agree, and the bus driver turns the vehicle toward the mysterious tunnel. As the bus slowly approaches its entrance, every passenger begins thinking about the life they left behind. Memories of their families, friends, and happier days flood their minds. Each of them silently wonders if they'll ever see their loved ones again. And that's where the movie comes to an end. The film leaves behind countless unanswered questions. What really happened inside that tunnel? Were they truly trapped in another dimension? Or was something even more mysterious at work? Most importantly, Did they ever make it back to their own world? The movie never reveals the answers, choosing instead to end with the survivors holding on to their memories and a faint hope that they might one day return home.